Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven. I'm your host. Alex is currently unavailable, but Tyler is here. And as you can see, if you're watching us on video, Tyler has been recently engaged as of last night. Tyler, congratulations, man. And how was that whole experience for you? And kind of, fill us all in on the details.
Yeah, so yesterday I proposed to my girlfriend of 5.5 years. And of course, she said yes. So now I'm officially engaged, and I'm certainly the luckiest guy in the world, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with her. The whole plan was to surprise her with the proposal, which she kind of knew was coming. But then we opened the door, and all her family and friends were there. My family and friends were there, and she was just blown away by the whole thing. And it was one of the most beautiful nights I've ever had. Everyone was just happy and having fun. And there were, tears flowing and alcohol flowing, and it was great.
And it looked back to normal. Like it just looked like a normal evening.
It did.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. No, I have not seen them for a while. Of course, I've seen my family, but for everyone to come together, it just felt like, and even the last couple of weeks, like it's been a little bit harder on my family with, my grandpa has some health issues. And so for all of us to have something so uplifting, and then everyone to come back together as COVID, this quarantine is ending. And for us to just have a blast, it was a perfect night, and I couldn't have dreamt it any better.
Yeah, man, I'm super happy for you. Obviously, being the only married one on the podcast has been a little fun for me to jab at you guys, but happy to have someone in here. I loved Alex's meme that he posted today about the
Yeah.
three of us in the relationship. So super happy for you guys. Wish you nothing but the best, and health and happiness in your engagement and, of course, marriage going forward. So we've got a fun episode planned for you guys today. We're going to chat about some things that I personally have been reading and studying and learning from the book Payton and Breeze, the book written by Jeff Duncan, of The Athletic. Obviously relevant to the Chargers because the Chargers are going to be implementing some pieces of the Saints offense. So I made sure to take some notes and talk about some things that have stood out to me so far. And then we also have an interview with our good friend Taylor Soto, aka AZ Bolt Gang. So as always, the audio version of that is going to happen on this current episode, and then the video is going to be happening on a separate video for those that are listening on YouTube. And then we are going to continue our building a franchise series with the offensive linemen. I personally am so excited. This is the episode that outside of the quarterbacks I was most excited to talk about. I think that's going to be super fun for me and Tyler to do, and potentially Alex if he's able to join us in a second. But Tyler, man, I think this is going to be an exciting episode, and I think we should jump into it right now.
All right, let's do it. What do you got? What have you been reading, Steven?
So it's been an interesting thing for me to kind of, hear all this coach speak from the current Chargers coaching staff, and then read how the Saints in particular have, kind of applied those sentiments, applied those philosophies, throughout this insane run by Drew Brees and Sean Payton. And I know it obviously hasn't resulted in a ton of Super Bowls. They've only had the one, but just a super successful offensive run. And so one of the first things that, I wanted to talk about, and they talk about in the book, is the way that the Saints use versatility and personnel, because those two things, they've become buzzwords at this point for the Chargers coaching staff of, well, we want guys that can play multiple positions, do different things, fill different roles, and then we can use the personnel packages to create mismatches. And so one of the first packages that they talk about is what they call the pony package, which they use two running backs on the field at the same time, whether that's Reggie Bush and Deuce McAllister, Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray, or Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. They use both running backs to threaten the defense with, possible run packages. And then because Alvin Kamara and Reggie Bush are so good at running routes and catching passes out of the backfield, they're essentially able to treat Alvin Kamara like a receiver, Reggie Bush like a receiver, and they can stay in like 11 personnel, but also have the threat of having two running backs on the field. So it's just a super interesting idea to hear them, talk about this versatility of X player, in this case, Austin Ekeler for the Chargers, and be able to hear how the Saints have applied it throughout their, 12-year run in New Orleans.
No, I'm happy to hear that. And if it translates to the Chargers, that's great. You know, as I said a couple episodes ago, Ekeler went from running, you know, in the slot or out wide 27% of the time. That dropped to 19% this last year with Shane Steichen. It's a criminal waste of talent for a guy who's like second in yards per route run among running backs and wide receivers. So getting him to use him like that is great. My issue with that pony package, not with the way the Saints did it, but with the Chargers is who's the other guy? Like, I feel like they could have run this pretty well with like a Melvin Gordon. I know it's like a bad word, but like I think Gordon Ekeler could have been okay with that. Whereas like Kelly and Roundtree, I think they caught a combined like 24 balls out of college. Not saying that they can't develop. LaDainian Tomlinson didn't exactly catch a lot of balls his last year in college, but they're not LaDainian Tomlinson. Yeah. And so are they heavily relying on Justin Jackson then, who I think would be like the other complement? Like I think Ekeler and Jackson is the most dynamic combo, but then they drafted Roundtree. So what do they view Jackson as? Is it Ekeler and Jackson? Is it Ekeler and Roundtree? Like I love the idea of making Ekeler, you know, your feature guy, your versatile guy, put him wherever, you know, as your wide receiver 3, if you will. But who's the other guy? Who's the other guy who's going to step up? I can't wait to see who steps up in that regard, because I really don't know yet.
Yeah, that is definitely something to keep an eye on during training camp, is who's able to really ascend to that RB2 spot. Because I know all of us kind of assume that Justin Jackson has that role, and he is, you know, he has proven to be the most efficient runner. Obviously, Roundtree hasn't taken any snaps in the NFL yet. But at the same time, I don't think that Jackson is a lock to be that RB2 spot, because he's never been healthy. Like, he has to earn that role just like everybody else. And, you know, to your point about Austin Ekeler, I think it helps him to be more of like an RB1A as opposed to a clear-cut RB1 like he was last year. Like, you know, his season last year, if he had played the whole year or most of the year, he would have had a huge season. But, you know, there is that kind of argument of like, well, are you using him the right way? Is this more beneficial to him or more beneficial to the team? Like, you know, you don't just want to have him run for a lot of our yards. You want to have him play to the best of his abilities. And to me, it makes sense to have him in that kind of supporting role where he's able to really thrive as a receiver.
So which of these guys are you taking as the RB2? You think it will be Jackson? It should be Jackson.
It should be Jackson. But I know Alex doesn't like him, but I'm not going to be surprised if Larry Roundtree really comes out and has a big role in this team. I know that a lot of people are skeptical about the pick, and I get that. He wasn't my favorite running back either, but I did like him. And I think he fits the mold of the Latavius Murray, of the Mark Ingram, a truly violent runner, you know, doesn't really care, doesn't lack confidence. I think that's the biggest thing with Joshua Kelly, is that he's got to get the confidence back. And I just don't know how, like, if he comes out in the first game and he has another fumble, like, is he going to be able to have the confidence to withstand that? And is this new coaching staff going to have the confidence to kind of, you know, put him through the ringer after fumbling again? So to me, I don't trust Jackson's health. I don't trust Kelly's confidence. So, like, over the course of the 17 games, if I had to bet, you know, who finished the second on this team in carries, I'm taking Larry Roundtree.
That's actually a really good point about confidence. I didn't even consider that, not just because, like, we kind of talked about how Kelly lost his confidence after that fumble, then the other one, and then the fact that it just in general, he was losing his confidence in the run game. But then you talk about the way Roundtree runs with that confidence. Right. So, yeah, actually, I buy that. Okay. I would have said Roundtree maybe like second or third, but yeah, I buy it. Good point.
I just think people are going to be surprised when they hear that. And I think they're going to be surprised when he gets onto the field, because like none of us know what is going on here. And I know some people have said, you know, on Twitter, like, no one's really talking about the running back so far. Well, they haven't. There's been no contact, right? Like, we're not going to hear who's the best running back until they get into pads, until they get into a preseason game. And that's truly when we'll know who is going to be the RB2, because you, as a running back, you know, you can't really show off and really push the other people in the room until you get pads, until you get hit, until you're able to really kind of show what kind of stamina you have. So there's so much of the running back position that we just don't know. I saw Justin Jackson post a video the other day of him working on his route tree. That's fantastic. I think if he's able to be, you know, kind of Austin Ekeler's backup and maybe stay on the field as more of a supplementary pass catcher, that might be what's best for him at this point. But Right now, like I said, if I had a bet, I think I would choose Larry Roundtree.
And even if Roundtree or Kelly, whoever it is, has the best training camp in preseason, we've seen just as early as last year that doesn't always translate to being the RB2 for the rest of the way, where, Kelly was the best player on the team and during the preseason, or excuse me, the off-season training camps and stuff. Yeah. And he was RB6 by the end of the year.
Right. The other personnel package that I enjoyed reading about was their tight end package, because the Saints, when they've had Jimmy Graham and recently with Taysom Hill, they've been using 3 tight end sets quite often. They led the league in 3 tight end sets Jimmy Graham's last year, and then they led the league in 3 tight end sets 2 years ago when Breeze was semi-healthy, at least according to Jeff Duncan. So the way that they describe this personnel package is that they always have to have that versatile pass catching tight end. Recently, Jared Cook, and then Jimmy Graham before that. And they're able to treat, 12 personnel where you have 1 receiver, or 13 personnel rather, 1 receiver, 3 tight ends, essentially like 12 personnel, because you have these versatile tight ends who can do different things. Then you throw Taysom Hill into the wrinkle, and I'm not the biggest fan of Taysom Hill, the quarterback, but Taysom Hill, the tight end, is a lot of fun. A Taysom Hill, the gadget player, gives them a lot of options. And so just looking at the way that the Chargers could use their tight end group, you have the versatility of Donald Parham, you have the versatility of Jared Cook, albeit a little less so because of his age, and then Trey McKitty and Steven Anderson as well. So, not a lot of us have been talking about the potential of the Chargers using 3 tight end sets, but I do think, based off of Joe Lombardi's background, that we could see them use 3 tight end sets quite a bit more than a lot of people think.
I like that. And I don't remember when they stopped. Well, I guess when Virgil Green went down, but at their height of their powers, if you will, as an offense, they were using those 3 tight ends with Green and Henry and the third guy, whether it be Parham or Anderson or whatever. Yeah. And so to bring in Jared Cook, have that familiarity, you already know what his role is. He knows what his role is in this offense. And then you go with Parham, I'm guessing. And then, it makes a ton of sense why they would draft Trey McKitty then. If they want to go, look, we're going to run a lot of 3 tight end sets, but we need to not make it so obvious that it's, this is our, if Virgil Green goes out there, he's probably blocking. And if he goes on a route, it is what it is. It's the second time he'll do that the entire game. McKitty can do both. So I understand. It kind of makes sense now why they would take him, because he's got his chops in both as a blocker and as a route runner and pass catcher. So I do really like this group. I think Parham improved as a blocker towards the end of the season. And of course, you see what he can do as a receiver, still kind of limited, but each of these guys, well, maybe Cook not much as a blocker, but you already know he's the pass catcher. But the other guys, you can kind of mix and match however you want. And yes, you can even mix and match Gabe Neighbors. I don't really remember how much he blocked as an inline tight end, but certainly as your fullback, H-back, tight end, whatever you want to do with him, you can mix and match there. So it's a very interesting group. I hope they do it because they were very good at doing it last year.
Absolutely. And then, the thing about the Saints, Josh Hill, they use kind of essentially as like a 6th lineman. Whenever they were actually calling pass plays, they would essentially use him, to be that extra lineman, provide a 6-man protection. And that really allows the quarterback to have that much more time and be able to really get the ball out quick, which is obviously what the Saints have lived upon. So the second thing that I wanted to talk about here is actually Joe Lombardi, because that is like the biggest thing. I know there's still some people who are concerned about his time in Detroit, and I totally get it that it did not end well. But just kind of reading through this book, it just has made me realize that it was not a good fit for him in Detroit. And whether or not that was, Jim Caldwell's fault or Joe Lombardi's fault, Joe Lombardi at that stage in his career was so used to the Saints' way of doing things and the amount of collaboration that the Saints were allowing under Sean Payton. And just it was not a good fit in Detroit is what I'm trying to say. And they talk about the way that the Saints, go about building their game plan. They take every single day of the week. They never finalize the game plan. Everything is collaboration from start to finish of the week. And Joe Lombardi, something he said is that when he got to Detroit, Jim Caldwell wanted every single detail of the game plan finalized by Tuesday, and then he would kind of take it and run with it. Yeah. So, the way that the Saints do it is they would stay up all Monday night, all Tuesday night, and have most of the game plan ready by Wednesday when practice was happening. and then hopefully have it finalized,
Wow.
like Saturday evening. But he was saying that Jim Caldwell in Detroit wanted every single piece of the game plan done by Tuesday. And so Jim Caldwell, or Joe Lombardi, excuse me, had a smaller role and there was less collaboration in Detroit. And so to me, it just felt like he was never comfortable there and it was not a good fit for him.
Wow, I did not know that. That sounds dreadful. That reminds me of the movie Draft Day that we had to watch, where they're like, yeah, we'll just jump into the draft, whatever. And then they like have their plan already. And then the day of the draft comes and they're like, we should study this guy. This totally sounds like a Draft Day scenario. Wow, I didn't realize that was the case. Like, I don't know how most teams usually do this, but Tuesday seems a little bit early. You just got home. I can't even imagine that you've put this all together. And even, I don't know when teams get analytics, but you're not really getting it till like Sunday night, maybe even Monday, perhaps, especially after the Monday night games are played. So to get your analytics then, of course, that means they probably weren't using analytics. Right. And, having them ready by Tuesday night is ridiculous. So if they're able to collaborate like that with the Chargers, that's great. That has been the focus of Staley when he hired all these different coaches from different backgrounds. We're going to work with everyone. Everyone has their own input. We won't have to use all of it, but I like everyone's perspective, whether you're from college, the pros, a newer guy, an older guy. We love all of it. So, I mean, it seems like not that they're copying the Saints, but if you're going to imitate anybody, Sean Payton and the way the Saints have run their offense, it's not a bad way to go.
Yeah, 100%. And so it was just really interesting to learn. Jeff Duncan described it as Jim Caldwell and several other coaches around the league kind of prefer like the less is more simplicity approach to building a game plan. And, they kind of prefer to have, things relatively stay the same. And, you add plays as you have to. And so, Joe Lombardi had a much smaller role, which is weird to say because he was going from being a quarterback's coach to an offensive coordinator, and his role was significantly lower. So it was not a good fit all around for anyone involved. And really, I was just kind of confused why the Lions ended up hiring Lombardi because, he wanted to install a little bit more of the Saints culture. And basically anytime he had these new ideas, Jim Caldwell was shutting him down. And I love the way that Jeff Duncan described it because the Saints offensive staff, all 11 men, would meet on Tuesday morning and every single coach had a role. If the lowest assistant on the totem pole had an idea, had something that they noticed in film study, Sean Payton would listen to it and they would put it into practice. And if it worked, they would keep it. If it didn't, then they wouldn't move forward with it. And so I just like the way, hearing about this collaboration, because like I said earlier, we've heard collaboration and communication all throughout, like you said, all throughout Staley's process. And if this is who they're copying, then it seems like this is actually going to be put in practice. And that obviously is a much more efficient way of working with your assistant coaches.
No, I love hearing that. I appreciate that you've been reading all this and putting this together because it's really cool to see how this is translating to what the Chargers are doing. And like you said, even the lowest guy on the totem pole, Cody Shada is considered their support staff. Yet as soon as they drafted Rashawn Slater, Brandon Staley goes, we had Cody Shada talk to us about him. He's part of the reason that we drafted. Shada's not a coach. He's an analytics guy. Not that he's low on the totem pole, but he kind of is. But his input was important to them, and they took the player at 13th overall in the first round. So I love hearing that, and I can't wait to see how this translates. Wow.
Well, even Derek Ansley was talking about it. He has all these connections to these players, and he was asked about Asante Samuel Jr. and he was asked about Josh Palmer and what they're like as players. So Staley has already kind of shown, hey, I'm going to listen to these coaches and take their opinions to heart. And we're coming from a coaching staff that clearly communication was lacking. We said several times throughout the season that there just seemed to be some kind of disconnect between Anthony Lynn and Shane Steichen, despite the fact that they were both offensive-minded head coaches. So it just seems like hopefully that kind of lack of communication is behind the Chargers.
I hope so. I'm really curious if they're one of the teams that would install on Tuesday and leave it on Tuesday. It wouldn't surprise me. But even even if you do that, it feels like even if that's your game plan on Tuesday, it even felt like the Chargers last year. Like spend the rest of the week on communication or game time situations or something. Yeah. I mean, it really just felt like they had everything done by Tuesday, and then they all just went home. Like, what happened?
Well, I don't know if you heard. Did you hear what Teddy Bridgewater said about Carolina recently?
I've heard like little bits about it, but go for
So
it.
Teddy obviously was in New Orleans, right? And then he goes to Carolina, who it was mostly a staff who had just come up from college. And so someone asked him about like the struggles in Carolina and what that was like. And he basically was saying like the attention to detail was just not there. And, you know, this college coaching staff, because when you're in college, you don't really focus on all these details. You frankly just focus on, you know, X's and O's, making sure that X player is, you know, ready to graduate, eligible for, you know, his classes, and, you know, hopefully he's in good shape and all this stuff. Like, it's so much, it's such a more basic level of football than the NFL was. And so Teddy Bridgewater, one thing he said is like, we didn't practice 2-minute offense until like late in the season. And then by then we were like done. And he's like, we didn't practice, you know, red zone very often because we were just doing, you know, general basic position drills, like all practice long. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, Jeff Duncan mentions that the coaches in New Orleans know that attention to detail is like the number one attribute. And, you know, some of these coaches said that they were sleeping at the facility that Sean Payton had built in, like a room for coaches to sleep in, like with a shower and everything. And all these coaches were just, you know, everything was attention to detail. That was the whole thing. And, you know, they talked about some coaches were assigned to watch film from like 3 years prior to try and find like weaknesses in Bill Belichick's defense or Tom Coughlin's defense. And, you know, if it's a new coach, you have to watch all of his previous stops and like try and find these tendencies and try and find these weaknesses. And then, you know, you look at like the Chargers staff last year, and there just was not that attention to detail. Obviously not everyone is going to go to that extreme that the Saints have, but, you know, it was just amazing to read about the, you know, 100% dedication to attention to detail that Sean Payton and his staff have had recently.
Wow. I really feel like this organization, like the Chargers themselves, have changed a lot, and that Staley coming in has been a big big breath of fresh air for them.
There we go.
And Jesus, I'm so tired. I was busy. All right. And I'm hoping that this time around, like, I know this isn't quite how it works, and I hate being the guy that brings this up, but, you know, people will talk about how the Spanos being the owners, you know, in general, they haven't found a way to get the most out of their coaches and coordinators. You know, there hasn't really been a coordinator the Chargers have had that is really, well, no, I shouldn't say that. Reich, and then I guess Sirianni's on his way. I forget it. Point is, I hope that the organization it'll actually come to fruition, that they will actually allow all of this to happen. It seems like they are so far, and I hate to even bring that up because they really shouldn't mix all that much. But, you know, hopefully that, you know, Staley is able to implement his entire vision, because everything we're talking about right now sounds great to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like Staley is building this culture of, you know, developing these coaches as well as the players. And you know, he mentioned it, I think, in his second press conference, like, listen, I want to get these guys head coaching jobs. I want to elevate them as well as elevate the players. And so it's just interesting to see. The other thing I felt like was super interesting is that Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator in New Orleans, he's been there forever, and he's never had a head coaching offer. Like Dan Campbell, the tight ends coach, gets to be the head coach of Detroit. Joe Lombardi has now, you know, gotten his second stint as an offensive coordinator. But Pete Carmichael has been, you know, Sean Payton's right-hand man for 12, 13 years, and he's never gotten a head. Oh, not, I don't know if never, but, you know, he's never left. He's just stayed in New Orleans.
Interesting. I always kind of felt that way about Ron Miles as a guy. Like, his track record just was building and building and building and building and building wherever he went. And I don't mean like as a head coach, but is anyone going to give this guy a shot as a defensive coordinator? Like, because he's really freaking good at his job. And he never, like, we every year we toss around the idea of Ron Miles replacing somebody that the Chargers had on their defense or as their coordinator, and no one ever picked him up. So yeah, it's frustrating for sure. I don't know the story about Carmichael, but I mean, he deserves a job, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of fun stuff. I have not finished the book yet. You know, I'm about halfway through. So, you know, once I finish it, we'll be able to talk about some more things. I've heard that there's like a whole extensive chapter on Joe Lombardi coming up. So, you know, hopefully I'll be able to dive into, you know, him a little bit more after reading this. So We're going to move on now to my conversation with Taylor Soto. So again, audio version, that's going to happen right now. Video version is going to be a separate video. So that's going to happen right now. All right, Tyler, let's get into this offensive line draft. I know it was going to be the three of us. Instead, it's just going to be the two of us. But I still think it's going to be a very interesting conversation. Frankly, because the Chargers have a couple players that I think could go in this kind of setting. Obviously, I would have loved to have Alex on here. You get 5 more picks, would have increased the likelihood of Rashawn Slater, Corey Linsley being selected. So let's get started.
Yeah.
I have the first pick. Cannot wait. I'm glad that this, the first one was random. The second one, we just kind of moved up a slot. And so I'm very happy that I get the first pick of the offensive line draft.
Okay.
And I know that everybody's going to kind of look at this and go, oh, well, David Bakhtiari, Ronnie Stanley, all these players, right? They're all very deserving. But there's been a theme of the way that I go about doing this. And that's that I want an elite player on a rookie contract as much as I can have one. So my first overall pick of the offensive line draft is going to be Tristan Wirfs, the right tackle of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Someone that I truly think was arguably the best right tackle in the game last year as a rookie. Someone that I'm going to have on a very cost-controlled contract for the next 4 years and then be able to extend after that. And I know some people are going to say, well, like left tackle versus right tackle. I don't think that conversation matters as much anymore. To be honest with you, I think you've got to have 2 great offensive tackles on both sides. And Tristan Wirfs is obviously that. Love his athleticism, love his attitude, love everything about the way he plays, and I love that rookie contract.
Yeah, that's the guy I would have gone with. I kind of figured you were going there because I know you liked him out of college. He's on that rookie contract, and I mean, you get an all-pro instantly. Like, it doesn't. And listen, these are for imaginary teams. Maybe your quarterback's left-handed, so maybe you have your technically your left tackle here, and Tristan Wirfs is perfect for you. Yeah, that's who I would have gone with too. It's a smart pick, and I mean, how often can you? Fine, whatever. Okay, so I do think there's been a legit influx of talent at tackle recently into the league, especially last draft, and it seems like this draft as well. But last year, having a good trio or whatever it is of tackles come in and be really good right away is great for the league. So I think, especially because Alex is not here, I'm going to wait on tackles, even though I normally wouldn't. Particularly because I know a little bit more about the tackles than I do the interior offensive linemen. So I got to shoot my shot here. And if I'm going to go with an interior offensive lineman, why not start with Quentin Nelson? I do have him for the next 2 years at $20 million total the next 2 years, and then I have to pay him that extension. But I do get a legit interior offensive lineman, a tone setter, a guy who has been a Hall of Famer pretty much since the moment he stepped onto the field. Melvin Ingram is still having nightmares about this guy. I'm going to take Quentin Nelson. I'm going to play him at left guard. Obviously, but
yeah, that's absolutely a great call. And I should say, we're trying to build a unit, not just draft like the 5 best players. So we're trying to go left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle. And I think that's the right approach in terms of waiting on tackle. If I did not have the first pick, I would have done the exact same thing. And I'm going to do that right here. And I'm going to take Elton Jenkins from the Green Bay Packers.
Okay. Nice.
Somebody that I think is criminally underrated. He was in the top 10 in terms of pressures, in terms of fewest pressures allowed. Great run blocker. And more than anything else, I personally just value the way that he can play any spot along the line. The Packers are reportedly playing him at center right now in OTAs. He played some left tackle, played some right tackle. And I think the way that the league is ran, you just need to have each team needs that one guy who can play all across the board, because I think you can much easier find a backup when you have that one elite player you can put somewhere else. Like in the Chargers case, like let's say Brian Bulaga goes down, I'll move Elton Jenkins over to right tackle and I'll figure out who to play at guard. Whereas, if you don't have that guy, like the Chargers don't, you have to play Trey Pipkins, you have to play Brendan Hymas. It just gives you that many more options, that much more flexibility. And Elton Jenkins is currently on a rookie contract. He has 2 years left. Again, that kind of same thing. And then so I'll be able to extend him in 2 years' time, save a lot of money, and not lose any kind of play. So Elton Jenkins is going to be my second pick.
I like it. Okay. Some good players here, some good picks here for sure. Yeah, I like it. Elton Jenkins, I haven't been able to watch him, but you speak so highly of him. I think every time that there's something versatile brought up, you're always like, that's their Elton Jenkins, whoever that
Yeah.
player is. Like, you can do this. I think, I don't know if Slater was someone you referenced as like an Elton Jenkins type, but anyway.
It was Elijah Vera Tucker that I gave that. I gave that
Vera
tag
Tucker.
to.
Gotcha. Maybe I'll take Elijah Vera Tucker later. I don't know. Okay, so if I am going to go with the player on a rookie contract, I'm either going to take a guy who I saw last year and was really, really good, or a guy that I think can be even better. And so why not take the generational prospect? I have to rip this from Steven because he took Wirfs from me. I'm going to go with Penei Sewell, and I'm going to righteously play him at left tackle as he deserves to be, not at right tackle, which is, again, 2 tackles. It's important, but man, is that such a giant waste of time at right tackle. So I'm going to go with Penei Sewell as my starting left tackle of the future. Has not stepped onto the field yet, but my coaching staff on this team is great, and we're going to maximize our left tackle, and he's going to be good for this team. Also, sorry, where is Jenkins playing for you?
He's going to play left guard for me. That's where he spent most of his time. So he's going to be playing left guard for me.
Cool.
All right. So he takes Sewell. Very smart. I'm going to make sure that I have all these positions lined up for. Oh, I forgot. I just realized I forgot to tweet out the poll from our last one. So I'll do that after I have to refinish this one. All right. Next pick for me. Now I'm going to take my big contract. I'm able to have the flexibility with these 2 less expensive contracts. Apparently, I'm just a big fan of former and current Green Bay Packers. So I'm going to take David Bakhtiari. He has a $30 million cap hit until 2025. So get my expensive one. But I think it's pretty clearly that David Bakhtiari is the best left tackle, at least in terms of pass protection. I think you can make an argument that Trent Williams is the better run blocker. But Bakhtiari is a little younger, doesn't bring the health concerns that Trent Williams has, even though he just tore his ACL. But I have no doubt that Bakhtiari is going to be able to, get back to his former self. And, just watching him and watching Corey Linsley at the same time, like, I was just in awe at how little Aaron Rodgers was touched, just because Bakhtiari and Linsley were shutting everything down, and Elton Jenkins, of course. So I've got 2 Green Bay Packers on my line so far. So I've got Wirfs at right tackle, Elton Jenkins at left guard, and then Bakhtiari at left tackle.
Well, what's better than 2 Green Bay Packers? Let's go with 3. I am going to listen. Is $12.5 million a year for Corey Linsley ain't bad, and it's not even the number 1 contract. Technically, he's tied for second, and I'm sure someone's going to pop up ahead of him. I could have gone with a rookie, maybe like a Creed Humphrey or something, but I'm going to pass it off potentially if Steven wants to take him. But yeah, I can't. I mean, how often do you find a guy who gave up 4 pressures in a season? I think Bakhtiari was 9. I know that both players didn't play a full season, but 9 pressures and 4 pressures, man. Come on, that's ridiculous. I can't fathom what only allowing 4 pressures looks like for 16 or for 15 games or whatever Linsley played. So, so I'm going to go with Corey Linsley here. Now I think it'll help gel my offensive line, of course. And, your breakdown was great. The communication is there. The brains are there. I don't remember if he tested all that well athletically, but just a cerebral part of the game that was missing from this team. Even if him and Feeney aren't the most athletic, the brains are there and the communication is there. And so putting him onto my line, I do think I can be successful and help out my future quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's the right call. That's where you're going to take Corey Linsley for sure. I considered, kind of building this offensive line around youth at the tackles, and then maybe going with a Corey Linsley or a Frank Ragnow at center, which I think you can absolutely do. Ragnow still has 1 more season on a rookie contract, so that could maybe work. But then, it climbs to 13.5 starting next year. So in terms of financially building, that's maybe not where I want to go with right there. So I'm struggling a little bit with who I want to pick at center, because there are so many good options there. So I'm going to pivot, since you already have one, and I'm going to take my right guard here. Just got to figure out which one I want to choose.
Okay, please don't take my guy.
Let's see here. Trying to find my guy, where he's at. Okay, I know who I'm going to go with.
Okay.
Shoot, where'd he go? I just saw him. What's his name? Okay. I'm going to go with Kevin Dotson from the Steelers. He was a third-round pick, so I'm only paying him $988,000 until 2025, which is just fantastic value. And, being able to get somebody super cheap here. Felt like he was one of the, better guards in the league last year, personally, especially after watching some film on Matt Filer. So I'm going to go with Kevin Dotson, super cheap player to fill my right guard spot.
I like it. Then I am also going to follow suit. A slightly different way of approaching it. Let me find his name and contract on my list here. Hurry up, Tyler. Please find it. Okay. This one's tough because technically he's a tackle, but he did make 3 starts at right or left guard total last season, 2 at right. Yeah, 2 at right, 1 at left here. Only allowed 3 pressures in those 3 starts at guard. And I'm trying to find a cheaper player here. So I'm going to go with Michael Onwenu, who is going to cost me less than $1 million the next 3 years total. And so while I do have more expensive Quentin Nelson coming up, and of course, Corey Linsley, Michael Onwenu only allowing 3 pressures in 3 starts at guard. Granted, it's not a huge sample size, but not only does he do well in those spots, he also can play right tackle. And on the entire season, he only gave it 14 pressures. So very inexpensive player. I think I can try to build around him, and I have to because I need to be cheap here.
Yeah, that's a great call, man. I think he was someone that I considered taking right here instead of Kevin Dotson, but I do think, I like Kevin Dotson's ability as a run blocker a little bit more. So next here, I don't have the kind of financial flexibility to take Ragno, like I said. Somebody that I think is absolutely, in that conversation for best center in the league. But I'm going to go with Quentin Nelson's teammate and take Ryan Kelly to round out my offensive line. So he's a little bit less than Corey Linsley, 12.4. And he's still pretty young. He's only 28 years old, still coming into his own. He only allowed 12 pressures last year, so not up there in terms of Corey Linsley, but still a very, very good center. Somebody that I think can still grow some more, give me some youth, and give me that last expensive contract.
I like it. Ryan Kelly was definitely a guy I would have taken. I just haven't watched him, so I can't say much about him. But that's a really good call there. I am going to take a swing here and go with my right tackle of the future here by taking a guy that has played right tackle before, but we've most recently seen him at left tackle. And who better to take than Steven's #1 offensive tackle prospect from last season? I'm going with Jedrick Wills, and I'm going to play him at right tackle along my offensive line. Only 18 pressures last season at left tackle, so there is some flexibility there, but he did come out of college as a right tackle, so I'm going to plug him there at my right tackle spot and pray it works.
That absolutely would work, man. I love Jedrick Wills, and if not for Tristan Wirf's like ascension to elite level, Jedrick Wills was very, very solid, and I think absolutely carries that kind of future designation as well. And like you said, the tackle position right now is going through a bit of a renaissance, which is absolutely needed with, the 3 players that we took on rookie contracts and Rashawn Slater, who, unfortunately wasn't taken by the 2 of us. But if Alex were here, I have no doubt that Rashawn Slater would have been taken, especially with that rookie contract and how affordable it is. But I think this is, without a doubt, the golden age of offensive tackles. And apparently it's supposed to get better, even better next year. So a lot of fun young players there.
No, that's great. I guess I never asked you, where would Rashawn Slater have ranked last year in your group of tackles?
He would have been behind Wirfs and Wills for sure. For me, I think Sewell probably would have been ahead of Wirfs because I had Wills first, Wirfs second. But Slater would have been third at least. I just think as prospects, man, Wirfs and Wills were just so good, and they were just. I think you can make an argument that Wills would have been ahead of Sewell for me this year. So, and next year they've got another Alabama offensive tackle and some other ones, man. I haven't done any looking into that, but people that have been raving about the next offensive tackle class, which is just going to be fantastic. Looks like Alex is just joining up as we finish our conversation here. Alex has joined the show.
Hey, Alex.
Hey,
Pick a line. Go.
well, I'm here. So yeah, I'm gonna just show up in the last 5 minutes of the show now. So I hope everything's okay.
It's all good, man. We had a good time doing our draft, so I'll let you know who we took, and then if you want to chime in on potentially, who you would have taken. So first overall, I took Tristan Wirfs. Then Tyler took Quentin Nelson, and then I took Elton Jenkins. Tyler took Penei Sewell. I took David Bakhtiari. Tyler took Corey Linsley. I took Kevin Dotson from Pittsburgh. Tyler took Michael Onwenu from the New England Patriots. I took Ryan Kelly. And then Tyler finished it out with Jedrick Wills. Looks like.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good group. But yeah, no, Tristan is a great first overall pick.
I agree, man. And it was a lot of fun doing this one, as the offensive line guy, and I had a great time doing this. So, and of course, Tyler, again, man, just want to wish you congratulations. Super happy for you and Janae, your fiance. Wish you guys nothing but the best. So, Tyler, Alex, any final thoughts before we wrap up today's show?
No, I don't have any final thoughts. Thank you for wishing me.
No final thoughts. Just congrats to
Alex,
Tyler.
you just got here ongoing seconds.
yeah.
Stop talking. You're behind me. You're behind me on the internet. You just got here. Shut up. Alex, have at it, man. Yes, thank you very much. I hopefully only have to get engaged once.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
We lost him.
Alex left now. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. We're working on the internet issues, I promise. So hopefully it gets better over the next couple of weeks. But thank you so much for tuning in. As always, leave us a rating or a review. Leave us a comment. Let us know who you would have taken in this kind of draft, and maybe some of your takeaways from our conversation about the Payton and Breeze book. And again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.